Jesse, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well. Jesse, where are you joining us from? Southern California, is that right?
Yep, Southern California, about an
Thanks.
hour south of Los Angeles. So,
All right. Thanks for making time for us this morning. I know it's early over there.
yep.
So you and I talked a little bit earlier in the week. Kind of got an idea for how Hasura and Renaissance Learning kind of came together, what you folks use us for. But for everybody on the call that's not super familiar, do you want to give us a little bit of background and history about yourself, and then also about Renaissance Learning, just so we can get an idea of who we're talking to and why we're talking to you?
Yeah, sure. So background, been involved with IT related positions for the past 20 years or so. Started off doing support calls for IT and then moved over to doing software. And then now I'm a staff engineer over at Renaissance. So been here for about 5 years or so. Prior to this, I was at a genetics company, which was a fun job, but very, very complicated. Learned a lot there. So that's a
So what
little
you're
bit
saying
about
is
me.
education is easier than genetics?
Much easier, yes.
Okay, okay.
It makes more sense in my head. Um, so yeah, Renaissance Learning is a SaaS company and analytics company for cloud-based pre-K to 12 educational software. So some of our products you may have heard of is Star, Accelerated Reader, Freckle, Nearpod, Lilo. We have a big list, but Star and Accelerated Reader are the ones we've had for the longest. Those ones started around in the 80s. So I
I was gonna
actually used
say, yeah,
Accelerated Reader. Yeah,
I did
okay,
too.
so
I'm remembering like an old terminal in the library,
yep, yep,
dot matrix printers next to them. Yeah, this is
yeah,
PTSD and this is aging us, but yeah, keep going.
yeah. So that's a bit about Renaissance and myself. Yeah,
Yeah, awesome. So side note, I was an educator for almost 10 years and
okay,
had some run-ins with your products as well. A lot
awesome.
of fun to use them and very helpful. Teachers, especially nowadays, are focusing more and more on the data analytics side. And there's always kind of
Yep,
been this debate, right, of is education an art or a science? And I think, with the tools that you guys are putting out there, we can be more scientific about the way that we teach kids. And yeah,
yeah,
it's very helpful.
yeah.
So yeah, how did you guys run into Hasura? Like, where did you discover it?
So at Renaissance, I was on a different team a couple years ago, and one of my coworkers, we had a middle layer API that was just cumbersome and annoying to work with. It was a GraphQL API, and we wanted to add caching and authorization and some other things to it. And he proposed using Hasura, and he did a POC on it for a few different projects, and this was one of them. And it worked great. So that's sort of how it got thrown into my mind. And so on a different project a few years later we had to get things going quickly. It was like a quick POC we were going to do, and then like a month later we had to deliver like a demo on it. So we didn't really have the time or support to build our own API, and so we tried out Hasura and it ended up working great. And so now we're still using it now, and we're pushing other teams to start leveraging it just because it's simple and super fast. And yeah,
When you say other teams, I'm just curious, how big is the development side of Renaissance?
it's a lot. There's multiple teams, hundreds of engineers, right? Yeah, it's a developer software company first, and the
Okay.
education company second. So
I like the way you phrase that. That's good.
yeah.
So in particular, how did you folks start using Hasura in the first place? Like what was the actual product that you built out or the POC, that kind of thing?
So the first POC was just Hasura was our middle layer API. So we were using JWT tokens to authenticate and get authorization. And then we were just having it connect to a simple Postgres database that was storing things in JSON-B columns. So it was just one giant payload that we threw in there per like user that we would return some data, not uh, tables or anything, just one column, one table. So that was a little bit simpler and a little quicker to get going. And that data was exported from Snowflake like on a daily cadence. So it was dropped into an S3 bucket, Postgres, or the Lambda picked it up and pushed it into Postgres. A very simple pipeline, right? But
Yeah.
as things got larger and larger, that pipeline became more and more complicated. So that sort of will segue us into how we're using it now, which is we have it connecting directly to our Snowflake service that we're using. So Snowflake is a giant columnar database analytics software thing you can purchase for lots and lots of money. So we we went from syncing data into Postgres and the cost of that and the dev time and the resources and the complexity of running a pipeline to pull millions and millions and millions of records all the time into Postgres just became too much. So we decided, hey, the cost of this is a lot. Let's try just connecting directly to Snowflake, which also has lots of costs with having it act as a back-end data source for a front-end application, right? But leveraging some of Hasura's caching and building our Snowflake tables in a certain way got those costs down to like a lot cheaper than what it was to run the pipeline. So
I'm sure those cost savings are not only in dollar values, right, but they're also in performance.
mm-hmm. Yep. So we did like a small comparison test of like, what's the response time of like making a call to Hasura and having it hit Postgres versus the response time of having it hit Snowflake. And it was different, but not different enough to where the user would recognize it, right? It was 200 or so milliseconds for the Postgres endpoint, anywhere from 300 to 500 milliseconds for the Snowflake one. So half a second at the most, which is, for the most part, really good for a front-end application to respond for those API calls. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And from what I understand as well, right, you folks are using the caching feature that we have as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we refresh our Snowflake, the data we're pushing, or the data we're displaying to our users is refreshed every 24 hours. So we're able to cache it. We cache it for 12 just in case we want to refresh things a little sooner. But yeah, we use Hasura's caching. It works great. Those cached calls return in under 100 milliseconds. So super fast.
And this is a loaded question, but how easy was it to implement that caching feature?
It was really easy. Initially we used Hasura self-hosted, and that was a little bit more complicated because I had to build the Redis cluster and all that. But when we moved over to Hasura Cloud, which was just a few months ago, it was super easy. Just turn it on.
Yeah. Just add that caching directive on your query, and there you go, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah,
well, awesome. Is there anything that you want to tell folks a little bit more about Renaissance Learning, or anywhere they can go to find some more information about you folks and what you do?
Yeah, so we're available right through the website. Go read about Renaissance. It's a great company. I love working here. The products we offer are awesome. We're really focused on putting the teacher first so that they can support their students. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Awesome. Good deal. And lots of products that are out there. So lots of different choices.
Yep.
Jesse, thanks so much for joining us today. Happy to have you here. And if anybody has questions, Jesse may stick around for a few minutes and can answer them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll see everybody online. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.